First of all, welcome to the presentations in the panel today on effectively how to launch a new online program. My name is Lee Harrison. I'm an account director here at NetNatives in our New York office, and I'm truly excited today to be with this incredible panel. Hopefully today's conversation is going to give you a little bit insight into launching a new online program, the pitfalls, the pros, the cons, the things you have to worry about, internal problems, external problems, anything that you will foresee going forward. Just before we get started, and for those who don't know, and also to appease my marketing manager, I'm just going to do a brief introduction into NetNatives to tell you who we are. And then after that, I'll try and be as quiet as possible, just try and steer some questions to the people you really want to listen to. So we're a student marketing specialist agency based in New York, the UK, and China, where we have over 140 staff delivering student marketing solutions to universities, community colleges, brands, and lifestyle organizations across the world. Our NetNatives, Akiro, Student Hut, and Netizen business combine data, AI, technology, and expertise to deliver high-performance marketing campaigns anywhere you need to your students. Now that really obvious plug is out of the way, I'm going to go on to the panel and let them all introduce themselves. Jimmy, you're first on my list. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
I would be happy to. My name is Jimmy Hart. I currently serve as the Director of Marketing in the Division of Strategic Communications at the University of Alabama. That means that I work with just about everyone on campus except for the athletic department. If you're familiar with UA athletics, you know that they don't need or want my help, but we do handle all of the recruitment marketing. I've been at UA for just a little over 4 years now, and in higher education for about 15.
Goetze, I think you're next on my list, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Goetze Weiss, currently with G Marketing Consulting. I'm running my own business, working directly with university partners to help build their online programs from start to finish, full funnel activities. Prior to that, I was with Pearson here in the US and working on building their OPM business and transitioning them from being seen as a publishing company to an online technology partner. And prior to that, I was on the agency side as well. Nice to meet everybody.
And finally, and obviously not last, but equally as important as everyone else, Sheena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheena McFarland. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications at the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah. I have been here just over 6 years. Ahead of that, I was 10 years at the Salt Lake Tribune and kind of helped transition their newspaper from largely print to largely online. So kind of coming at this from a couple of different ways, but really excited to get to speak with y'all today and learn from each other and hopefully share some really great ideas.
So without further ado, let's get started. Look, we can't start a conversation ever nowadays in talking about student marketing in the last 12 to 16 months without mentioning COVID. So what a better place to start than sort of talking about COVID and how the perceptions of student marketing has changed, and also the modality of how it's taught. I'm going to open this up to any of you, and I'll let whoever wants to choose first. How do you think student preferences have changed in recent times? How has that affected how you're thinking about online education and online programs, and how, in comparison to potentially how you thought about it before? It's a very broad question, I know, but anyone want to start?
I think one thing we're seeing at Alabama is that a hybrid model curriculum is becoming more of an expectation than a luxury. We went through a period where we were forced to prove that online education can be effective, even if it feels uncertain to people when it's new. And I think we're going to see that most students assume that if they want to pursue that option, the university is going to make it available.
That's interesting. And with the hybrid model in particular, I think the key thing for a lot of students that we've noticed has always been the flexibility of it, rather than necessarily that they want it all online or they want it in campus. It's the ability to be able to choose. I know, Sheena, you've done quite a bit with hybrid models and worked forward and with that. Are you finding the same sort of thing where people are expecting a hybrid model all the time, or at least a hybrid model, should we say?
Yeah, I think that you are seeing that expectation change. I mean, we obviously forced this model onto students as we all adapted to COVID-19 and needing to continue education while keeping students physically distanced and away from each other. And I think that you're seeing that, as you know, here in Utah, we are coming back to campus this fall as mandated by our legislature. And so we are seeing a lot more on-campus activity starting up in the fall, but we're also seeing requests for, hey, are you going to keep this online? Are you going to keep this in a hybrid way? And I think in a lot of ways it's open. I mean, online learning opens up a lot of opportunities for students, especially here at the University of Utah, where we have so many of our students work full-time jobs or at least part-time jobs, and trying to balance that schedule with a full-time school schedule can obviously be challenging. But if you have the ability to have some flexibility throughout your day, that's a lot easier, and you can still get this really high quality education and the university experience in a different way. But I do think that one of the things that COVID has required us to do is to really show students can do online learning and we can do hybrid models, and it's allowed us to kind of work out kinks. I mean, in higher education, we are slow to change, right? Academia does not move quickly, and when something like this happens, you do have to adapt quickly. And so there's been a lot of conversations happening about online learning and, oh, do we do it? Do we want to put our toe in the water? And it was like, nope, we're just going to throw you in the deep end. And I think that in a lot of ways that's been kind of positive because it forced us to do something. And I think that you've seen a lot of successes across the country with programs that have worked really well with this. Folks who already had some established programs were obviously in a really good position to move forward. But I think that hybrid model I could see continue to go because you are able to reach more students than you ever have before. And that's obviously appealing to universities.
I think you touch on a really interesting subject there as well, like connecting that back into then leadership and perceptions internally, because you were talking about how people, you forced it on students, which meant the university changed quickly and not in this sort of, and I'm not going to agree with you, but universities are normally quite slow to adapt, should we say? So is that forced change? How then has the perceptions internally been affected by that? How have you been able to manage like internal expectations, not only from, hey, this course is now going online, or this course is now going to be a hybrid, how many more students or how many fewer students are we going to get from it? How have you engaged in those conversations, both with the sort of leadership potentially, but also with the lecturers who might not be as adaptable as well? Sheena, I was throwing it straight at you there. Yeah.
Okay, no, sorry. Just want to make sure that you're throwing it back. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we, like everybody else, last March, right before our spring break, moved everybody, said, hey, don't come back after spring break. We're going to go online. We're going to do this. And those first few weeks, a little rough, right? Those last few weeks of the spring semester 2020, probably not as smooth as we wanted it to be, because we were having to scramble. We had like 3 days basically to turn everything into an online course. But what we did over the summer is we did a huge amount of training with our professors, and so many professors showed up to say, hey, how do I make it engaging online? How do I make sure that I'm connecting with students? How do I make sure that we're getting the interactivity that we need in these courses? And in business, obviously, we're not in science labs and needing to be hands-on, so it's a little bit easier to adapt our curriculum. But I was really impressed with the great ideas that were coming out for how to create that interactive environment and how to make sure that you were still connecting with students in the same way. I know that I also teach. I'm an adjunct marketing professor, and I am so dependent on getting something back from my audience, right? When I'm talking, I don't know if a joke landed, I don't know if a concept clicked or not. And so that's been kind of the challenge, I think, from teaching online. But I've also found ways to make sure that my classes are interactive and that it's not just me talking at a screen for an hour, and that they are able to kind of work with stuff and have engaging conversations. And I break people out into groups and those kinds of things. And I picked up all of that from that summer training, which has been great. And I think for our leadership side, I think all of us were so scared that no one was going to come to college. Everyone was going to take a gap year and no one was going to come back. And I think that was a really scary point. And at the Eccles School, we've actually seen an increased enrollment both in fall and spring of this year, which has been amazing for us. And I know that goes against a lot of trends, but I think it's because we have really worked hard to make sure that students are getting the education they want. And we've really emphasized with them that taking taking a year now sets you back for your salaries, for everything else, right? So it takes away time that isn't because you needed a gap year to mature, or you didn't need a gap year to go explore the world. It was because of an uncontrollable circumstance. So push through it and see if you can get through it. And we have seen such perseverance from our students, but our administration has been really thrilled, obviously, with the numbers coming in, and that's been a huge amount of work for our recruitment teams, our marketing teams, and of course our faculty to make these worthwhile, and having students say, hey, I took this really great class and it actually worked out pretty well and you should take it too. And that's been great to have that word of mouth.
I think, Sheena, to piggyback off something you just said, what's interesting is that a lot of high school students were forced into going online as well and being exposed to it earlier prior to getting into a university setting. So to me, it'll be interesting to see how many, and I have a high schooler now who is online and they're going back full-time April 5th, and she doesn't want to because she's so comfortable with the online, the flexibility of the online, her lifestyle with online. So to me, it'll be interesting to see the propensity of high school students who prefer the online option and who are even now preferring to stay online in high school and not bounce into going back full time because of all the flexibility and the benefits they get. Now, on the downside to that, there's been a significantly and disproportionate amount of high school students who are in the underserved communities who have lost ground in university, who have lost ground on the high school side, who have had to drop out. They don't have access to the technology. They don't have access. And it'll be interesting to see how the universities then address those schools who are providing more services to get those students back up and going, because that has been a significant and disproportionate amount of students who have dropped out or not come back or not moving on from high school. So that'll be interesting for me to watch as we go into from a marketing perspective, because the language is changing on how you market to students about what online is. You don't have to talk to them about the flexibility. You don't have to talk to them about the benefits of online, but you have to communicate what it is that you as universities, Jimmy and Sheena, will be doing for them that can help them with a transition from online or from on campus to online, or to keep them into these programs. And Sheena, you had a great point, which is how do you keep them engaged? How do you make it interactive? Those types of things once they're in.
And I think Gocha brings up a really interesting dynamic in that internal shared philosophy that the university has, because in administration, it's very easy for leaders to think, oh, we're going to move this stuff online, which means we get to sell it as flexible and on your schedule, and all of these buzzwords that have traditionally been attached to online. But as a faculty member, you have to set up the course that way to meet those expectations. Faculty could still create an online course that is not flexible, that is not on your time, if they're not taught how to do it or motivated to do it. So one of the big internal conversations we've had to have is, what exactly is the expectation we're setting with our faculty for these courses, so that I know I'm not selling something to prospective students that's out of line with what the faculty are actually going to do.
Yep.
This all kind of relates back to, like, obviously here we're all marketing, we're trying to promote courses and the growth of courses. Obviously the messaging is one angle and one facet of where you've got to look at and how you address it, and you've got to make sure the course matches what you're promoting. But then the second angle, obviously, here is typically with students, you've obviously got limited class sizes, you've got the location issue where people are coming from and to. So if they're based on the West Coast and you're in Alabama, like, how do they get there? How do they stay? How do they live? There's a lot more barriers to entry to the typical on-campus courses. How would you articulate that by just moving your course online, you're not increasing your audience 1,000 times forward, and you're not going to get 500,000 students, and it's not going to be as simple as that, to sort of the leadership? How do you articulate and manage expectations? Because obviously you're going from potential audience of a few thousand to, if you do it online and grow, tens of thousands, I'm guessing, and a global audience. How do you manage what people are expecting from the results of an online program and marketing an online program? And Jimmy, I'll go straight back into you here, just because it sort of follows on from your question.
The first question we ask is about how they're going to be recording their lectures or their course content. Because what we found is a lot of times the faculty don't intend to actually record it and make it available on demand, or they haven't thought about that step. And they assume that for their 3 o'clock class, they're going to get on and do a webinar style class at 3 and everyone's going to be there. But if we have sold the program or this class as on your time and it's not available on demand, then we've got to so we always ask with what is that content capture and then delivery mechanism to make sure they've thought about that step. And 9 times out of 10, if they have, then the rest of it's taken care of too. If they haven't, then we know we kind of have to start the discussion from the beginning.
And then,
Right.
Gota, you obviously come from this from quite a unique perspective in terms of you've obviously been around online programs for like before they were maybe cool and trendy, I guess is a phrase I'm going to go with. But have you found expectations from especially leadership and sort of the people like that need to know those numbers that have changed over time?
Yeah, it's interesting. The partners that I see who succeed greatly are the ones who have leadership that is completely bought in, and not that their mentality is either get on board or this isn't the place for you anymore, but truly that they know how to lead, you know, the faculty and students, even in the services, especially the services engagements, to get them all on the same page and to really communicate out that they're there to support the students. And so to me, again, when you have leadership who goes beyond just, I need to bring this class or this program on board or this division of the university on board, they look beyond and say, what services do we need to support those students through the transition to the online or enrollment? So it's better financial aid services, better coaching services that stay with the student all the way through, that they feel like they have some resources beyond just that one faculty person or assistants that they may have in the classroom. And it's not to diminish the value of faculty. These faculties they're so important. And if they're digital and they're communicating out themselves and they're communicating who they are, they're more welcoming and it's more engaging for students. However, again, that services aspect, I have seen made the biggest difference. You know, how quickly is someone to pick up the phone when I want to call them and ask questions about enrolling? How quickly can they get to me with the application process and the financial aid process? Have they heard from somebody else that I need to be passed to? And does this person stay with me along, you know, through the trajectory of my career? And that's incredibly important to students who are hesitant about coming online, or even maybe not. They do have all of these other things going on in their lives. They have kids, they have work, and they need that support to say, hey, you can get through this, or hey, we haven't seen you online in a couple of days, and there are flags that are raised. So the school has technology in place that can help with the students, and help the faculty then learn to say, hey, you need to pay attention to these 3 students who are failing right now in your class. You got to get them the support. How do you get them the support? And it's within their class and beyond their class at the university, in my opinion.
No, and it's actually great because you tapped on a few things here that I think David Eccles have recently done quite well in terms of support. They've done a lot of work recently on, and sorry to put you on the spotlight here, Sheena, but mental health, women, Black History Month, Women's History Month. Do you think, Sheena, that those elements are really aiding in how students are then engaging with you because they see that that's available online, and that's going to be a key indicator of why I'm still happy to be taking that course?
Yeah, I think that's been a big part of our marketing. I think all of us have learned a lot of lessons through COVID. And I think one of them is kind of that I've talked with faculty about is that we really do care about the holistic student, right? It's not just how are they doing in my class. It's that support that Coach is talking about, right? And it's saying, how do we do this? And I mean, we created courses for how to learn online best and have really easy access for here's how to access these things to here's how to, you know, thrive in these environments. But we have so hit the student support stuff, right? We have a full webpage that has every resource you can think of that's at the Eccles School, at the University of Utah, and in the greater Utah community for things like food pantries to mental health resources. We have like a Take 5 website that just has 5-minute breaks for just a mental self-care moment and those kinds of things. And students have really responded well to them. I mean, one of our biggest successes this year with our current students is we created the Animal Associates page where everyone could submit their pet and get funny names and awards and, you know, why they're the best employee of the month kind of thing. And people just love that from the faculty, staff, and student perspectives. And that was really fun. So I think finding ways to kind of talk to more than just the student as a student and say, hey, we've got your back through this entire process. And we're going to make sure that you have the support you need to succeed now. We're going to support you in your career. We're going to support you through that transition and find ways that work. And if you're struggling or you had an academic stumble because it's been hard this semester and you haven't adapted as quickly as you wanted to online learning, I've seen faculty be so incredibly flexible and supportive with students and make sure that they aren't setting up students to fail, but rather to succeed, which has been really heartening to see.
Yeah, I think the persistence and graduation rates will end up differentiating a lot of university partners or universities, because people will want to know can people get through these programs? How realistic is it for me? And what can you do to help me? Sheena, it's great to hear that you guys are doing that stuff.
I've been really happy with everyone just coming together and making that work. So it's shown the heart side of things, which has been nice, because we get a lot of the brain side, but it's been nice to see the heart side.
No, I think, yeah, it's been great to see, and I know we've worked quite closely on some of those projects you guys have been doing, and a lot of them touch a lot of heartstrings, so it's always hard not to feel emotional and attached to those sort of campaigns and that sort of work. So, I think one thing following on from something you mentioned earlier, Jimmy, you obviously spoke about your brand. You obviously connected a lot to the sports side and the sports brand at the Alabama football team. And even though I'm British, I'm a huge American football fan. Alabama Roll Tide is my new team. But how have you found that those sort of extra elements of university? I think in the background at yours, it said schools should be palaces. And
Yes.
especially in the US, institutions here obviously represent a much larger proportion of a student's life. Not just that sort of going, getting the education and leaving, but it's the local aspect of where the school is, the sports side. Like I have friends here that are a lot older than the college age and are still massive fans of their old university teams, even if they're very low division school sides. Do you find that the online people are still having that connection to the school, or are you doing anything special to try and really get that connection still and really make sure alumni stay that kind of alumni going on?
It's a really interesting dynamic here at the University of Alabama, because our athletic department has the history it has and the resources it has. And everyone wants to be associated with a winner. There's really not a whole lot you can do to change that. So there is absolutely an advantage that we enjoy, particularly with lead generation. At the very beginning, people recognize the brand. And a lot of people who we would consider kind of ghost applicants or off the radar people are already engaging with our brand in other places, even if we're not aware of it. It also means that people are relatively more inclined to get involved with the Alumni Association because that is so closely tied to athletics and things like watch parties and association groups across the country. Even when it's not football season, or even if you never attended a class on campus. So that is definitely an advantage we enjoy. But I don't know how many athletic brands are really strong enough to count on that. Certainly at the previous institutions I've worked at, we have not had that same kind of impact. But as the ladies were saying earlier, absolutely none of that replaces the direct human contact element. At one of my previous institutions, we put a significant amount of time and resources into attempting to build an online portal that was going to be the gathering place for all of our online students to come together and build community and all of this. And in its essence, we were attempting to automate that human experience so that we didn't have to pay a bunch of people in a call center to make those phone calls. And it turned out to be a decent resource for those students in terms of finding a connection to mental health resources or academic advising. But in reality, it was not patently not successful in creating a sense of community or really having an impact in retention or loyalty to the university. And after 2 years of working on that, we looked back and we could have hired 5, 8 people with the amount of money we spent, who would have been far more successful in the long run, just making some phone calls.
I think we've spoke a lot about the broader aspects of this now, and I think what I'd like to just sort of change the direction a little bit and talk about a bit more the minutia detail of like the launching of a program, the sort of the nuances, some of the pros and cons, and maybe some of the sort of more bespoke features and the differences. And I think the best start point, and again, Jimmy, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you straight back on the spot again, just because I know about your online program a little bit. I've noticed there's and it's not like a common trend. There seems to be a very big 50-50 split here. Some schools work on a way where they will create like a separate brand, sort of a separate image for their online program. So I know you have Bama by Distance, and correct me if I got that wrong, but I think that's what it's called. And then I know, Sheena, with your online offerings, they're just sitting directly under the David Eccles brand. And Ghost, it'd be great to get your insight here as well, because I know you work with a lot of schools. You've created that diffusion brand. Was there a purpose for that? Was there a reason you did that? Was it just because you thought you should? And again, then Sheena, afterwards, if you can follow up with why you haven't separated that. And do you think, I'm going to put you both on the spot, do you think you made the right choices by doing the ways you've gone about it?
Yeah, so certainly at the University of Alabama and at some other schools in my experience, the status quo is really just a vestige of how it was created 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so at the time that the University of Alabama initially launched online programs, they put all of the resources for the technical infrastructure in the College of Continuing Studies. So regardless of whether it was a business course, a biology course, a criminal justice course, the individual college was creating the content, but all of the delivery was occurring through the College of Continuing Studies. And so it was a decision of that college's dean to brand it as Bama by Distance, rather than trying to create some co-branded idea of, the UA College of Business powered by Continuing Studies or something along those lines. During the pandemic, it has actually been a real advantage for us because it created a platform where we could very easily draw a distinction that the courses we would now be offering online would be going through this Bama by Distance infrastructure, which has proven successful and highly rated for years before the pandemic. So at UA, at least the claim we were making wasn't that we had to do a sudden pivot and we're going to do the best we can given the circumstances. It was we already had this powerful, robust platform. And because circumstances changed, we're going to take this opportunity to further utilize it to the benefit of all of our students, not just the online students. So was it the right decision? I don't know, but I have certainly taken advantage of it over the last 12 months, and I'm glad we're in the situation we're in.
And then following on from that, I know Sheena, as David Eccles, you sort of sit it all under the same brand and the same construct, and I know it hasn't been bad for you either. So it'd be great to just get your insight into, like, was that a choice you made to make sure it stayed within there, or did you actively even think about it? That's I suppose sure. the crux of the question.
Right, absolutely. And yes, we actively made the decision to keep it under the David Eccles School of Business brand. We wanted to continue strengthening that. But it's funny how similar my situation was to Jimmy's, even though we did it differently, in that we had an incredibly robust, award-winning, highly ranked MBA online program that had amazing infrastructure built in. They had a whole team that knew how to work with faculty to make sure that everything was recorded well and looked really polished and all of that kind of thing. And man, did we work those folks hard over the summer as everyone was getting together to record their lectures, and they were just rock stars. It was so impressive. And we've been able to add to that team because they've been doing so much great work. And so we built, again, on the infrastructure that already existed, which was great. So for we have a couple of different ways that we do online learning. We have our asynchronous, fully online classes, which is at your own leisure and that kind of thing, and you can do it on your own schedule. And then of course we have the hybrid classes, which are like how I teach, which is every Tuesday and Thursday from 11 to noon. You have to be online, right, to be talking with me and doing lecture and that kind of thing. And so we really work to differentiate those during the pandemic specifically. But as we're launching new programs, to get to some of the expectations that you need to set, is you need to understand what benefits you're giving. And I think Jimmy's really talked about that, is what are you actually going to be providing to students? We are just launching an MHA online, our Masters of Healthcare Administration online program starting in the fall. And the initial conversations were, well, we're going to make it flexible, but we're going to make everyone show up at the same time as our on-campus classes. And it was, well, that's not flexibility, right? So let's have this conversation. So we were able to get to a point where they realized, okay, we're going to do it asynchronously, but then we're going to have office hours on Fridays so that students who want to get together and network can do that, but it's not required as a grade. So it doesn't impact that. So it is truly flexible. But I think really setting that up is important. But to get back to your question is, I think it was a good idea for us to keep it branded as the David Eccles School of Business, because you are getting the same professors, you're getting, where it's all within our school that we're doing this. So we didn't have another college we had to work with. It was all internal, and we had a system that worked really well. So we were positioned really well to jump into online learning in a bigger way because we've done it well in the past.
I guess then the goats are setting up the tiebreaker here in terms of, but you obviously work with a few schools. Like, have you noticed a trend either way? My experience personally seems to just be how potentially leadership sees it, and if they see it potentially as their own new college in a way.
It's an interesting question, and one that comes up with every single client I have. And the biggest thing is, to me, what I have found is that when you create a sub brand or a brand like Purdue Global is just creating Purdue Global rather than just Purdue Online when they bought Kaplan. And that was intentional because they bought a different school and they brought them on, and it serves a different target audience. So that one makes sense to me. When I was working with ASU, and ASU had the same conversation, should be ASU Global because Penn State was global. In Colorado, we have a school here that does University of Colorado Global, but it has nothing to do with the University of Colorado. So it creates confusion. So to me, I like the fidelity of keeping the brand, and the modality is simply online. There isn't anything you're delivering that's different from a brand perspective. You're delivering the same curriculum, the same faculty. So to me, it's the modality, and I would not create a separate brand then and put money behind branding and creating awareness for that brand and everything else. In University of Alabama's case, super brand. And there's not a lot of, impact that you have to make there when you're creating a sub brand essentially, or a brand underneath the online modality. But to me, it's a modality, and I keep it pure to the perspective of you're delivering the same brand, the same curriculum. Your students can graduate on campus and walk across the same stage. Their degree doesn't say online. Keep it university focused, and not dilute the value of what it is that you're delivering, frankly, from your university. I just think it helps down the road. My opinion.
I feel like I need to let Jimmy speak now, just in case he's wants to follow up on that. Yeah.
I don't disagree. And quite honestly, if we were starting from scratch today, I probably would advocate for sticking to the main brand. Just because I think it makes it more clear to the students that all of the university resources are available to them. Yes. And that, there won't be limitations they face that are greater than the limitations of an online student. But yeah, I'm lucky in my position.
I think then moving on to that, obviously the content of these courses is mentioned a few times, but from a sort of teaching perspective. But how about from an actual learning perspective? Do you consider, when you're launching these programs, okay, mathematics, math as an American says, do you like, that's obviously something that can be taught online. It's a lot more in person. It's a lot more formulas, working out solutions based. Where something maybe like biochemical engineering is has a lab element, maybe a bit more a practicum side of it. Do you have to look at that when you're launching these online programs? Are there any programs you've seen, or course groups you've seen, that are more successful than others? And if so, like, what are they? Like, are you finding that students are more now orientated around more vocational if it's online, rather than more, so we say, the sort of traditional, like sort of STEM-esque programs? I know that's a very broad question. I've done that purposely because I have a feeling there might not be some answers to elements of it, but to others. Let's start with you, Jimmy. I know I keep going back to you, but you're first on my screen. So,
well, this is actually part of the job I enjoy the most, because it's where I feel like I'm doing some really practical marketing. And we do not, make any attempts to suggest what academic content should look like, but we do try to get as much information as we can to make sure we find an audience to share that information with that is ready to receive that content. So, for instance, if we're talking about general mathematics, chemistry, biology, that can appeal to a lot of students in just about any college if they're at the beginning of their career. And another way I'm lucky here at Alabama is that we have an online dual enrollment program called UA Early College. So we actually have the chance to start pushing freshman level courses to high schoolers through that, which makes it just a seamless transition into undergraduate online courses. But then when we get into the more specific stuff, we really work with department heads and deans in particular to try to identify where we can find not just the prospective student audience, but the influencers for that audience. Nursing is one that we've talked about a great deal over the last year, because there is a very real need for more nurses in our region of the country, but also because we have a very, very highly thought of online nursing program. But just, doing very general nursing college branding stuff, or, going to those nurses magazines that are available in every hospital monthly. Really, there's just too much competition is what we found, particularly the more general, the nursing discipline. And so we're really looking for opportunities to hit markets where we know there are already Alabama graduates and there's an alumni presence that can help influence, or markets where our most prominent faculty have come from and may have some name recognition, as well, of course, our industry sponsors in the hospitals and health systems themselves. But really just making sure we're shooting at the right target has been the primary focus for those more sophisticated programs or offerings.
Kind of like a bottoms-up approach where you look at the audience first and then see if you've got the programs you can then fit to that audience, rather than the other way. Okay. Yeah. So, Sheena, I know this question's a bit different for you because you're obviously more of a focused element of a college. But have you found any nuances within like specific programs that you offer?
That's a good question. I remember when just after I'd started at the Eccles School, I was working on a video about our MBA online program, and I was thinking, man, online, asynchronous, you never see each other, how does this work? And as I was interviewing students, they had created a cohort, they knew each other, they had created the network that was going to take them through their alumni years, and that kind of thing. And I was so impressed with that. And so I think that kind of was the first time I was thinking about, oh, you can create these relationships within these classrooms, which is a big part of any school that has a strong alumni network, right? You want to have that. But as far as topics go, we've been pretty lucky that we've been able to adapt almost all of our classes pretty easily into an online format because we don't have labs. I think one area that we don't is we do have a trading floor that has Bloomberg terminals and those kinds of things, and students actually have a fund that they can trade money and do all of the stock trading. That's pretty hard to do online because you're not sitting at the Bloomberg terminal, right? So that's an important one to be able to have hands-on for. But I think a lot of it is, like we've been talking about, is the intentionality and the initial setup of the courses. If you can set it up where you are pre-recording lectures, if you're doing it asynchronously, if you're doing it in a hybrid situation, how are you breaking students out into groups? Are you doing group projects? Are you making sure that students are working with one another? And can you make that successful? And I have seen project-based classes work really well online, which I wasn't really anticipating. I kind of thought that would be kind of a miss, and students have made that work for themselves. Because again, I think there's that flexibility of I don't have to be up on campus. I can do this from my home, and we can find ways to make this work so there's less commuting time. But in the business side of things, I think we've been pretty lucky to have topics that lend themselves pretty well to online learning.
And then, I don't know if you've got any insight here. Obviously, you work with quite a few different places with, I guess, a lot of different courses and a lot of different offerings. So I don't know if you've seen certain ones struggle more or less, certain places win where they shouldn't potentially think, where they don't think they're going to win, and maybe lose where you think they should win. I think is an insight that I think people would love to hear.
Yeah, I think it depends where you are in the cycle. So if you're launching a program, I think you have to make sure you're managing and be realistic about what your expectations are for, year one or start one versus start 2, 3, and then year 2 of your programs. It does take time to build up your enrollments, and it does take time to get the credibility and the momentum behind it. And that's everything from developing your full funnel and having the data to help you understand who is your target audience, how many people are you talking to, what your conversion rates look like, and then all the way through, is your content relevant and being delivered in a strong capacity so that students are wanting to go on and have another good experience with the next course that they need to take within the program. So to me, it's multifaceted from the perspective of when you're launching a program, you do need to look at how are you differentiating yourself in the marketplace. To Jimmy's point, everyone is online now, and COVID has accelerated that propensity to have these offerings online. So why University of Alabama? Why University of Utah versus something that's in my own backyard? We see a lot of research that shows that most online students are the students that are within that 65 to 85 mile radius of that brand, the institution itself, because they have awareness for it. However, if there is a big offering, wow, if I could take this class at Stanford, maybe I will consider that versus taking it at University of Colorado or DU. So to me, it's interesting. There are a different level of target audiences you're talking about. The underserved communities are looking at things differently as far as what it is that they need. Again, from a content perspective, those who are looking to fine tune their skills might be looking for certificate offerings. They might be looking for, speed through the course. I want a program that's not going to take me that long to get through. The MBA program, is it 18 months versus 24 months? Is it a 12-month program? Those kinds of things. And then on top of content, I'm going to say it, you're going to be looking at price comparisons now. The world is your oyster. So cost becomes a factor in deciding whether or not they even apply for your school. Is there an application fee this month? Is there additional tests that I have to take? All of these things then add up to how hard is it for them to get into a program and for schools to get it up and going. Are they prepared to launch it, not just from a content perspective, but again, those other services that students need to be supported through online.
And Lee, if I could add to that, one other thing that we we try to pay close attention to here and make sure is a conversation we have with the academic side putting this on is what their competition is going to be, and what expectations they should have about that. Like you mentioned, we have. It is very commonplace for people at our institution to view the rest of the SEC as our competition. And it's not uncommon for someone to come with us with an idea for an online program and say, hey, we're going to be the first school in the SEC to offer this. So we're just going to have this huge rush of people who want to sign up. And we have to sit them down and make sure they understand that if you want to take this program and market it in a city like Atlanta, which is only 3 hours from Tuscaloosa. We get a lot of undergraduate students from there. But if you go try to promote an online program in Atlanta, the rest of the SEC isn't who you need to be worried about. You're competing against Purdue. You're competing against Florida State. You're competing against Texas. And you're competing against Liberty, Regent, Phoenix, Grand Canyon. So it really doesn't matter what the SEC is or is not doing. And you want to know that before you start spending money.
No, I think, look, I think we're getting to the end of our time here, and I just want to quickly say to anyone, if there are any questions, please put them out there. but yeah, I think everyone's insight today has been great, and I hope everyone else has enjoyed it so far. We are going to do a little Q&A now. Sorry, Jimmy, I think I cut you off there a little bit there, but I just saw the time. I was like, oh, whoops, I thought I had like another half an hour left. I thought we'd only been on for 15 minutes. So we actually did have one quick question relating back to that, which is why I kind of thought it was a good time to stop. It's when you're offering online and you're also offering hybrid or on-campus courses, you're offering three similar or two similar of any of those combinations. Are you differentiating them internally on price as well? Obviously, I think from some research we've done actually at Net Natives, people value online courses, even if they're the same offering in terms of the lecturer, the amount of classes, the course credits, the examinations. People have a perceived lower value. So I think the question's trying to orientate around is, are you lowering the cost and you're making the online versions more a better price, should we say? I think it's a nicer way of saying it. Or are you trying to maintain a status quo of a price across the board to show that it's the same value? Jimmy, look, you just touched on pricing then, and then I stopped you because I knew this question was going to come out, and so I'll ask you that first.
I would say it is likely that our business model around this will change in the next couple of years, because our adjustments have really shined a light on some potential inequities in that. In that if you are an on-campus student, you can take an online course just as part of your normal course load. So if you're an in-state student, you're paying in-state tuition. If you're an out-of-state student, you're paying out-of-state tuition. However, if you are a fully online student, you pay in-state tuition. So if I am a student from New Jersey or Springfield, and it just so happens all of my courses this year are available online and I select to take them all online, I am still in the system as an on-campus out-of-state student. So I would be paying more for that delivery than perhaps my brother or sister who just never came to campus and stayed at home. And I don't think that is a dynamic that our leadership is motivated to continue. So we'll probably be revisiting that really soon.
And then Sheena as well, have you thought about how the pricing structure of, because I know you've got a few versions of courses that are all sort of the same offering. Are you keeping the pricing structure similar, or is that something that's completely out of your control?
Actually, we have quite a bit of control over our specialized master's programs, particularly that have online offerings or on-campus offerings. And for most of those, for the resident price, the online price is the same as the resident price for our online and on-campus program. On our on-campus program, we do have the non-resident international student prices, but we do keep them the same price because it is the same value, right? And a lot of our programs have some of that flexibility where you can be an on-campus student, but maybe you want to take a couple of classes online because that works with your schedule better for a specific semester. So you are getting pretty much the exact same thing. I think that our fee structure is a little bit different where online students don't have to pay for maybe building use or something like that, right? There's a couple of fees that might go away. But for the tuition costs, we do keep it at the same because we are trying to show that it is the same value, that you are getting the same great education as you do on campus. And we work really hard toward that. So that's our value proposition there.
And there's one final question. I feel like this one's orientated towards GoTo, but the other guys can as well. Are people seeing an increased competition in online program offerings and looking? So I think what this question is trying to say is, if you've had a course that's online previously, how has that been faring in recent times, especially since COVID and the COVID launch? And the second sort of attached question to that is, are you seeing increases in student online numbers? Which I can actually elaborate on that. One of the things that we've noticed actually at Net Natives is actually the searches for online programs have not increased. There was a minor spike at the start of COVID, but then since then have actually stayed stagnant. So actually, I would say actually, especially with the search terms and people looking specifically for online programs, we've noticed that actually that hasn't been increasing as potential more and more schools are doing it. So I hate to probably precurse what Goetz is now going to say or like make it difficult for her answer, but we have noticed that the pool of the audience has stayed quite similar, but the competition has increased.
Yeah, the number of, COVID has been forced fun for everyone. it's changed the dynamics for everything from, again, my kids being in high school, going online. You know, that's why my office has turned into their study space. But to me, what I'm seeing is that you have to look at this by target audiences. It's tough to say that schools haven't noticed a dip. Some schools haven't. I mean, they haven't maintained a higher socioeconomic target audience. So there hasn't been a big change. Now, for the schools, there's been that disproportionate decrease in enrollments from the underserved communities that I look at, and that pulls at my heartstrings, because I want to know what are people going to do to get them back into school, the government, the institutions themselves, how are high schools going to keep kids in school, all of those things. This has had a significant impact. Yes, it's gotten a lot of schools online because it's had to, which is great. So there's a different offering now, but there's still challenges to get students online depending on their socioeconomic status. I think the schools that'll win, they'll hit it out of the ballpark, will stop and think, you have a significant portion of students that you'll get every time. That target audience is not, that's an easy win for all of you. You've got great brands behind you. That's fantastic. The schools that, will win big time are those that are going to take a step back and say, what do we come out of this, and how do we be stronger, and how do we differentiate ourselves, not just to our students, but to our community? And those, I think, are the schools that'll win. And it'll take things like additional services. It'll take things like paying attention, not just propping a course up online, which in and of itself is a challenge. The programs that have taken a hit, there are a lot of people who had to go back to work or couldn't afford it because they've lost jobs. So those programs have taken a hit. And again, I think it just depends on the target. Lee, that's a tough one to answer, because when you look at the research, some schools have maintained their enrollments or even gotten stronger, whereas other schools have declined, 12%. And of that 12%, 10% is that underserved population that, the underprivileged that is struggling to have to work because mom and dad lost their jobs, or parents, having to stay home with their high school kids and all these other things. So I think this has unraveled a big gap that we now have, and it'll be interesting to see how some universities pull that back together. But I do appreciate that it has forced a lot of universities to look at their infrastructure and to look at who they are and how to deliver a stronger offering to their students, where they have been traditional in their approach, not just in learning, but how they've delivered the curriculum. Like Jimmy said earlier, hybrid's going to be important. I think that's not going to go away. As Sheena said, these services are important, and you need to talk to people differently when you're marketing. It is about this person, this individualized. And while you may have 1,000 kids now online in one course, it still has to feel personalized. So, that's what I would say about this, is that, again, it's everything, and data will help you support through that. So, partner with someone who can help you deliver some data and analytics that'll then help you deliver what your students need, what your population needs, and go from there.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, Coach, I really liked what you were saying, and the underserved population is something that I have a lot of concern about and want to help and make sure that those folks have access. And at the University of Utah, just 2 years ago, we've created the For Utah Scholarship, which basically is, if you're in high school and you can maintain a 3.2 GPA, you will qualify for every dime of tuition and fees paid for for 4 years at the university level, which is awesome. And the first year we launched that, we saw the most diverse class and the most highly academically rigorous students coming in. And this year has been the same for the next incoming class. You're seeing an even more diverse group of students coming in, which has been awesome. So I think addressing some of the financial issues, like you're talking about, kind of on that bigger systemic level, really helps. And if you can make sure that you have the support to say, hey, is there a way to get a laptop to you? Is there a way to make sure that you have this? Like our library lends out laptops for the full year to students, right? And says, hey, if you don't have access, we'll give you this, and that will work out, and it's free of charge, those kinds of things. So there are ways to make sure that this works in an equitable way. And it's been great to see our university doing that and seeing other schools starting to do those kinds of programs to make sure the underserved are being served.
It's great to see. And look, just a shameless plug on some research we did at the end of last year as well. Like I think it was low income students are 50% more likely to be affected by by COVID and the launch of COVID, because they were either unable to afford education anymore, or B, unable to form the new, actually not able to access online education, because the only access they had to a computer and a library, which was just not a viable option for them, which I think just reiterates the great work that you're doing at David Eccles University of Utah, and a lot of schools are doing. So, guys, I think that's a wrap. I know we've briefly scratched the surface today. I'm guessing there's a lot of things other people want to find out and know about. I'm sorry we don't have more time. This is just the way these things are. I think we had 4 great characters. I normally rant on a lot, and today I felt like I was able to hold back and let the other great people on this panel speak. So I'm really excited they all got to, and I think we got some great insight. I hope everyone agrees. And that's it, guys. I wish you all the best, and thank the panelists for being here today. Wishing you all the best, and I think health and happiness is my new phrase. It seems to be the most common, and looking forward to speaking to you all very soon. Bye, everyone.
Roll Tide.
Much.